The river roared like a beast shaking its cage, swollen with melted snow tumbling down from the high peaks. Pine shadows stretched long across its frothing surface, as dawnlight spilled over the Rocky Mountains. On the ridge above it, a solitary figure worked with steady rhythm, his axe thudding into a spruce log. Elias Boone lived without hurry, his days measured in wood piles, traps, and the slow climb of sun and moon. Solitude was his companion, silence his trusted friend. He had learned long ago that the world of people left scars deeper than any blade. But on that morning, the silence broke out. At first, it was only a faint cry carried on the wind, half swallowed by the crashing water. Elias paused, head cocked, breath held. Again it came thin, desperate, rising above the river's roar. He left the axe standing in the stump and strode through the dew-wet grass. Rifle slung at his shoulder, the sound drew him downward, toward the mist curling off the torrent dot. Then he saw it, a small figure, no more than a speck against the white fury, clung to a splintered branch jutting from the rapids. The child's thin arms trembled, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. Water pounded against him, pulling, dragging, eager to claim him. Elias didn't think. He dropped his rifle, tore off his coat, and plunged into the freezing current. The shock seized his chest, knives of cold stabbing into his lungs, but he fought forward with long, brutal strokes. The river battered him, spun him, slammed him against hidden rocks. His vision blurred from spray and pain. Still he pressed on until at last his hand seized the boy's arm. The child screamed, kicking wildly, nearly pulling both of them under. Elias wrapped his arm around the boy's chest and heaved him free of the branch. Together they were swept downstream, swallowed by waves. Elias fought with every ounce of strength left in him, legs burning, arms numb, lungs screaming for air. Then by sheer will he drove toward the gravel shore and staggered onto it, dragging the boy with him. The child was limp, lips blue, his small hands clawed in the air as though still clinging to that branch. Elias lifted him, water streaming from their clothes, and started toward the cabin hidden in the trees. Inside, the fire was stoked high. Elias stripped the boy of his soaked garments, wrapped him in rough furs, and pressed him close to the blaze. Hours crawled by intense silence. Elias spooned broth between cold lips, rubbed life back into frozen limbs, muttered curses at death itself as if daring it to take the child. At last, with a shuddering gasp, the boy stirred, his lashes fluttered, eyes opening wide and wild. "Ma?" His voice cracked like a broken reed. Elias froze, the word piercing him. "You're safe," he muttered, his tone more gruff than he intended. "Rest." The boy shivered, gazing up at him with innocent trust. "Are you an angel?" Elias almost laughed, but his throat caught. "No, just a man." The child leaned closer to the fire, breathing shallow. Hours passed. Elias moved about the cabin, setting snares, sharpening a blade, mending gear, all the while conscious of the fragile heartbeat in his home. When night fell, the boy's small voice filled the shadows. "Why do you live here all alone?" Elias didn't answer at first. He stirred the pot of beans, staring into the steam. "Some men belong in the noise of town, others don't. Don't you have a family?" The words cut deeper than the cold river. He closed his eyes briefly, remembering faces lost long ago, brothers in arms beneath a hail of bullets. A woman's laugh silenced by sickness. He swallowed and forced out, "No, not anymore." The boy nodded solemnly, as though accepting the weight of it. Silence wrapped them again, softer this time, less like a wall and more like a blanket. By morning, strength returned to the child. He ate hungrily, then looked up with eyes clearer than before. "My name's Daniel Whitaker. Mom will be worried sick." The name struck Elias like a hammer. Whitaker. He'd heard of the family. Whispers of a widow struggling to hold onto a dying ranch at the edge of town. Folks said she'd lost her husband to gunfire, left with only children to her name. Daniel spoke quickly, words tumbling. He and his brother had gone fishing. He slipped, the river carried him off, and he thought he'd never see home again. Elias listened, jaw tight. He knew he could walk away now. The boy had breath, warmth, and strength again. But something in those wide eyes held him still, as if the river had delivered not just a child, but a burden he could not lay down. At dawn, Elias saddled his old horse, lifted Daniel up, and set off down the narrow trails toward the valley. The world glowed with first light, birds calling from pine boughs heavy with dew. Daniel clung to him, chattering now with the unbroken spirit of youth, but Elias rode silent, Each hoofbeat dragged him closer to people, to entanglements he had long fled, unseen. The forest watched. Shadows shifted between trees, figures crouched low, eyes glinting with cruel hunger. Silas Crow and his men had been trailing the Whitaker family for weeks, their rage simmering like coals. When they saw the boy safe in the saddle of a stranger, recognition sparked. "That's the Whitaker brat," Silas whispered, his voice as hard as flint. "The blood of the man who took my brother's life," the gang murmured, hands tightening on rifles. Hatred thick as smoke, Silas's gaze followed the tall man leading the child through the mist. His lips curved into a cold smile. "Blood calls for blood. Let's see who dares protect him." The sun climbed higher, painting gold across the valley as Elias Boone brought Daniel home. The widow Rebecca ran from the cabin door, her cry breaking the morning stillness. She fell to her knees, clutching her son, tears streaking her face. Elias stood back, watching silently, a stranger at the edge of her world. Behind them, hidden in the trees, vengeance had already begun. Its march ***. Rebecca Whitaker clutched her son as if afraid the river might come rushing through the walls and steal him back. Daniel buried his face against her dress, his thin shoulders shaking. Elias Boone stood aside in the doorway, his broad frame filling it, the mountain air clinging to his coat. Gratitude poured from the widow's eyes when she looked at him, yet he shifted under it as though it were a weight he did not want. "You saved him," she whispered, her voice raw with tears. "There ain't a debt I could ever pay." Elias shook his head. "No debt, just keep him close." He turned, ready to leave, but Daniel reached out with small fingers that closed around his rough hand. "Don't go," the boy pleaded. The mountain man froze. It had been years since anyone asked him to stay. Still, he muttered, "Best you mind your ma. I've got my own trails." Yet his boots did not move. Rebecca's eyes met his, silent but strong, a plea wrapped in quiet dignity. She invited him inside, offering a plate at her rough-hewn table. Against his own instincts, Elias stepped into the life of another family. The meal was simple cornbread, beans, a strip of bacon, but warmth seeped into the cabin. Rebecca spoke little, her grief still raw from the husband she buried, yet her strength showed in every word. Daniel, full of life again, told his story with wide eyes, casting Elias as a figure larger than life. The boy's hero worship tightened something in Elias's chest, but shadows stretched long over that meal in town. Word had already spread that Silas Crow was back. Folks lowered their voices when they spoke his name. He was the kind of man whose presence spread fear like wildfire. It was said he carried vengeance the way other men carried whiskey, always in hand, always burning. He had sworn that the Whitakers would pay for his brother's death, and though years had passed, hate had not cooled. Tonight, after Daniel's return, the first warning came. Elias woke to the sound of horses moving slow outside the ranch. He slipped from bedroll to window, his rifle already in hand. In the moonlight, shadows slunk across the fence line. When dawn came, the damage was clear posts torn down, chickens scattered, a bloody mark carved into the barn doors. Rebecca paled at the sight. Elias studied the symbol, the crude carving of a crow with wings outspread. He'd seen men leave signs like that before, men who wanted their enemies to feel fear. Before the killing ever started, "Silas Crow," he muttered. Rebecca's face tightened, grief turning to dread. "He'll not stop. He never has." That evening, Daniel clung to Elias as he sharpened his knife by the fire. "You won't let them take me, will you?" Elias should have lied, should have told the boy he was safe. But Elias tasted bitter on his tongue. He set the blade down, meeting the boy's gaze. "I'll do what I can." The next attack came swift. Shots split the night, a lantern shattered, flames licking up the side of the barn. Elias fired back, his rifle steady as stone, sending one outlaw tumbling into the dust. The others melted into the dark, laughter echoing behind them like coyotes howling. Rebecca fought the flames with buckets of water, her hair flying loose, her face streaked with soot. Elias joined her once the attackers fled, his shirt damp with sweat, his eyes grim. The barn stood, blackened but alive. "Why are you here?" she asked suddenly, voice sharp in the quiet aftermath. "You could have left after bringing my boy home." Elias hesitated. "Thought I would, but trouble found me before I could turn away." "You saved my son once," she said, her voice breaking. "If you leave now, they'll come back, and this time, they'll take everything." Her words struck like hammer blows. He had lived years believing distance was safety, that caring for no one was the only way to survive. Yet here stood a woman and her child, their lives dangling by a thread, and he was the one holding the knife that could cut it or the hand that could hold it steady. He looked at her, at the boy asleep in the corner despite the smoke and ruin, and the decision sealed itself. "I'll stay," he said. The night of reckoning came with no mercy. Silas Crow rode in at the head of his gang, torches lighting their faces with hellish glow. Horses stamped the earth, snorting, restless as their masters. Silas dismounted slow, his coat black, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. "Whitaker," he bellowed, "you took my kin. Tonight I take yours. Hand over the boy, or we'll salt this land with your blood." Rebecca clutched Daniel tight behind her. Elias stepped forward, rifle leveled, his voice like gravel sliding. "You'll ride through me first." Silas smiled cold, tilting his head. "So be it." The firefight burst like thunder. Gunshots cracked, torches swung, sparks showered the night. Elias moved with the surety of a man forged in battle, each shot deliberate, each step measured. Outlaws fell in the dust, but their numbers pressed hard. A bullet seared Elias's shoulder, spinning him, yet he steadied and fired again. Rebecca dragged Daniel toward the cellar, shielding him with her body. Flames leapt from the barn, painting the scene in red and gold. Silas advanced, pistol gleaming, eyes fixed on the boy even as chaos raged. Elias rose to meet him. The two men stood in the yard as the world burned around them, their breath steaming. In the night air, Silas sneered, "You can't hide from blood. It always finds its way." "Then let it find me," Elias growled. The pistols barked almost as one. Silas staggered, shock etched on his face as he fell, crimson spreading across his chest. But Elias dropped to his knees, clutching his side where the bullet bit deep. Rebecca rushed to him, Daniel at her heels, both crying out. Elias's breath came ragged, pain written across his weathered face, yet in his eyes was peace, something long denied him. "You're safe now," he told the boy, his voice low, steady. "Stay close to your ma. Don't let the world harden you." Daniel threw his arms around him, sobbing. Rebecca pressed her hand to his wound, whispering fierce prayers. Elias looked to the horizon, where dawn's first light bled into the sky. For years he had watched it rise alone. Now he watched it with a family at his side, the sound of a boy's heartbeat echoing in his ears. He closed his eyes, not in surrender, but in something that felt almost like rest. The mountains loomed above, eternal and silent, holding his story, like they held all the others of loss, of love, of vengeance, and of a man who finally found he was not alone.